Assalamu alaikum friends. Today we will study about inflation. So inflation, as we know, is a monetary phenomenon. It's a monetary phenomenon, and as given by the Friedman thinks that inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. It's always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. So, as we and he the Friedman also said that it can be produced only by a more rapid increase in the quantity of money, than output. So he thinks that we can produce inflation by increasing the quantity of money. So more rapid increase in the quantity of money than the output. But most of the economists do not agree with this, that money supply alone, that it is a monetary phenomenon. They don't think that money supply alone is responsible, is only cause of inflation. So there are other causes also, because our present, as Hicks says that our present troubles are not a monetary character. So they not a monetary character. So in the present time, where inflation we are facing is not a monetary character. And most of the economists define inflation in terms of, we usually see the definition of inflation as it is a continuous rise in the prices. Rise in prices. As we know, an economist, Johnson, he defined inflation as a sustained rise. Inflation as a sustained means uninterrupted rise in prices. So for a long time. So according to Johnson, inflation as a sustained rise. And there are Bruman also, he defines inflation. Bruman, he defines inflation as a continuing increase in general price level. Shapiro, he defined inflation in a similar vein as a persistent and appreciable rise in general level of prices. So we can say that it is continuous rise in prices, and we measure the inflation by the index as such as the CPI and GDP deflator, price deflator. For GNP, gross national product, and it is essential to understand a sustained rise in prices may be of various magnitudes. There are various magnitudes of inflation, means this uninterrupted long term rise in the prices have different magnitudes, as different names have been given to inflation depending upon the rate of rise. So we measure these magnitudes with the depend upon the rate of rise in prices. So some terms are there, some names are there. So first is creeping inflation. creeping inflation is rise in the prices is very slow. Is very slow. It's like of a snail, like a snail creeps. So this is also very slow and like a creeper. So it is, that's why we know we call this as creeping inflation. And in terms of the speed, as we see, uh, a sustained rise in the prices of annual increase of less than 3%, less than 3% per annum. It is so, this sustained increase is of less than 3% annually, rise in the prices, rise in prices annually. So if it is less than 3%, so it is characterized as creeping inflation. Such an increase in prices is regarded as safe, and this is essential for our economic growth. Now comes to the second one, that is walking or trotting inflation. So what it means? So when the price rises moderately, rises moderately, and annual inflation rate is a single digit, is a single digit. Sorry for the bad writing, actually. i I can't write so well. So in other words, this walking or trotting inflation is a rate of rise in the prices. This is it lies between the range of intermediate range, that is 3 to 7% per annum. And it is or we can say it is less than 3%, less than 10%. So in a single digit, it should be the single digit, means this is less than 10%, and this inflation is 3 to 7% per annum, is the rise in the prices in intermediate range between 3 to 7% per annum or less than 10%. So inflation at this rate is a warning signal. This is warning signal for the government to control the for the government to control it as before it turns into running inflation. So it's just a warning. Now the third one is running inflation. Running when the price rises rapidly, so faster than the creeping inflation, faster than the walking inflation. So they rise very rapidly, like running the horse, running of a horse at a speed of 10 to 20% is 10 to 20% per annum. It is called running inflation. Such a inflation affects the poor and the middle class adversely, and it controls requires strong and fiscal measures. It leads to, otherwise it leads to the more higher inflation. and we will study about it later. But first, sudden inflation of 10 to 20% is so high, the prices are so high that the poor and the middle classes it becomes difficult for them to afford the basic things, so it affects them so much now. And if the government did not take any measures, which as we know, the inflation controlling measures like the monetary and fiscal policy, so government have to take it. If the government did not take these measures, so it will increase faster, and which will be unable to curb it. So the fourth one after the running inflation, the inflation that comes is hyperinflation. So this hyper, you can understand what this means. So this inflation is more faster than the running inflation when prices rise very fast at double or triple digits. Triple digit rates. From the rate ranges between from more than 20 to 100%. So the prices rise very fast between 30 to 100% per annum annually, or more. It can also be more than 100%. It is usually called as runaway, or we can also say it is also called as runaway or galloping inflation. And it is characterized as hyperinflation because certain economists in reality they say this situation is when the rate of inflation becomes immeasurable and absolutely uncontrollable. This is uncontrollable and immeasurable. Is this inflation is hardly be measured and is absolutely uncontrollable, and price rise many times every day, many times every day. So this is in this situation brings a lot of total collapse of the monetary system, because the continuous fall in the purchasing power of money. So it is total collapse of the monetary system, and this is really a very hard situation for any economy. And this runaway and galloping inflation is so high that the money is just remain as a paper, no value remains of money. Now let's see the difference in all the three. So the speed with which the prices rises, let us see the speed after so let us illustrate this. I will show you in a figure that what is running and what is hyperinflation. So we will write years in time. That is time. This is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and this is 10. 10, 20. This is rise in prices. Rise in percent. So this is what? 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110. So now let's see what is creeping inflation. So this is creeping inflation, and this is walking inflation. This is running inflation, and this is hyperinflation. So what can you see in this figure? As we see, in the period of 10 years, 1 to 10 years, the creeping inflation has risen nearly about 40%, while the walking inflation has risen about nearly about 60%, and the running inflation nearly about 100%, and hyperinflation, and these running, creeping and walking inflation has reached so high in 10 years, while the hyperinflation in just 1 year has increases to about 110%. So this is the major difference in all these names of inflation, which depends on the magnitudes and the rates of rise in the prices. So the curve depicts the walking inflation, and these are the walking, running and creeping inflation, while the hyperinflation, where the price rose so fast in double digits and more than double digits in uncontrollable situation that collapsed the monetary system. So this is all about the inflation, and we will continue later in the next video with the inflationary gap.